As is known, during the May ceasefire, the Russian army did not reduce their assault activity in any way, but on the contrary, even increased it. As a result, the average losses on May the 8th, 9th and 10th amounted to 1,300 bodies per day and 115 vehicles, mostly motorcycles. At the same time, the average rate of assaults was 190 per day. Ukrainian military expert Alexander Kovalenko says that after the May victory truce, the average rate of assaults is 165 and losses decreased to 1,150 per day, with losses in the category of vehicles 150. That is, after May victory, amid the reduction in the overall assault rate, the number of assaults on vehicles has increased, which entails an increase in losses in this category. And there is an unambiguous conclusion. Either on May 8, 9, 10th, the command of the Russian army chased the meat, filled with 100 grams of combat, bayoneted, girded with red flags, or with an increase in the number of assaults, they do not pull out the provision of all of them, even with such simple and mass means as civilian transport. When the number of assaults per section of front line is reduced, it is easier to concentrate and provide stormtroopers with appropriate means staff. Yes, you're not wrong. The same motorcycles are now a standard unit of unit equipment, and roughly speaking, the more assaults, the less equipment is left in the formation to staff kit. The less, the easier it is to staff, he added. In recent weeks, Russian forces have been using less armoured equipment during assaults on the most active sections of the front. The enemy is likely trying to conserve its equipment due to reduced Soviet-era stocks, reports the American Institute for the Study of War, ISW. According to Ukrainian military sources, Russian forces have been using less armoured equipment and conducting fewer mechanized attacks in the Kurakhove direction after suffering significant losses of equipment in October and November 2024. A Ukrainian lieutenant colonel, speaking to the New York Times, noted that during assaults in eastern Ukraine, Russian troops have increasingly been using electric scooters, motorcycles and all-terrain vehicles, ATVs. He suggested that this could be part of Russia's ongoing efforts to compensate for the losses of armoured equipment. The ISW also noted that attacks near medium-sized urban settlements, such as Kurakhove and Pokrovsk, may be less favourable for mechanized assaults than in smaller towns and open fields where Russian forces have been advancing for most of 2024. Russian forces may be using fewer armoured vehicles in the Kurakhove and Pokrovsk directions if the Russian military is struggling to re-equip frontline Russian units and formations, and if Russian military command does not want to withdraw Russian units for rest and reconstitution and risk further slowing Russian advances in high-priority frontline sectors, ISW analysts suggest. The Institute also believes that the current pace of armoured vehicle and tank production in Russia suggests that such losses will likely be unsustainable in the long term. This is especially due to Russia's continued reduction of its Soviet-era stocks. Powerful explosions thundered in the morning of May the 16th in the temporarily occupied Crimea. It was loud in Sevastopol and Perevalnoye. As reported by the local resource Krymsky Vita, a series of explosions thundered near Sevastopol, where the Belbek and Kacha military airfields are located. According to published information, explosions also occurred in the area of Yalta, Alupka, and Perevalnoye after drone attacks. A video was published online which shows a fire in the ammunition depot of military unit 12676 in Perevalnoye. It is stated that the Simferopol-Alushta road was closed due to the fire at the depot. At the same time as the public writes, many ambulances drove towards Perevalnoye. As our source reports, there are dead Russian servicemen as a result of the burning and explosions of warehouses in Perevalnoye, Krymsky Vita reports. Meanwhile, the Golita of Sevastopol, Mikhail Razvozeyev, stated on his Telegram channel that the explosions heard in the city were the result of air defense activity. According to preliminary information, 6 UAVs were destroyed in the area over the sea at a considerable distance from the shore, said the representative of the Russian administration. The Atesh partisan movement reported explosions in the area of the settlement of Perevalnoye in the south of Crimea, in particular at the military base of the 126th Separate Guards Coastal Defense Brigade of the Black Sea Fleet of the Russian Federation and the 8th Separate Artillery Regiment. As noted in Krim.Reli, the base contains boxes for storing military equipment and weapons, as well as probably fuel and lubricants. The base was attacked twice, on March the 17th and August the 25th, 2023. Atesh reported that in the summer of 2024, the movement's agents monitored warehouses and hangars with equipment in Perevalnoye. The partisans managed to record important information about the storage and movement of Russian equipment and ammunition at military bases. At that time, according to the agents, the occupiers' base was not covered by air defense systems. Furthermore, the Ukrainian armed forces recently destroyed a radar station of the S-400 Triumph anti-aircraft missile system near the city of Saki in the Russian-occupied Crimea. Recall, Russians pull as many air defense systems as possible into the temporarily occupied Crimea, and this trend has been visible on the peninsula for more than a month. This was reported on air by the Ukrainian Volunteer Army spokesman Serhiy Bratchuk. This is the trend that Russians have been observing in the temporarily occupied Crimea, not just for months, but probably for years. Because the process of deoccupation of the peninsula continues, we always say that today is the stage of demilitarization of Crimea. Accordingly, Russian logistics in Crimea, military facilities play an important role in the military-industrial complex. This is a kind of resource base for the occupying forces, which are on the line of combat clashes of the Russian-Ukrainian war, the speaker noted. According to him, the Russians provide supplies from occupied Crimea not only to the Dnieper, Kherson or Zaporizhia directions of the front. Equipment, personnel, weapons of all this is being transferred from Crimea. Therefore, it is obvious that the occupiers need to protect these objects. And I would like to note that, despite the statements of many skeptics, Crimea has not disappeared from the agenda of deoccupation of Ukrainian territories, and this is obvious today, the speaker emphasized.